Good evening, TDN listeners and viewers of TDN, especially this week in interview. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Interview with your host and guide, Anthony Drago. Uh, on a Wednesday, I look forward to spending that time with you. This evening, it's bittersweet, because we lost someone that we could consider a very close friend to TDN Radio, a beacon of light to Dominica, a cultural icon we lost in the person of Rasmo. He was affectionately known as Rasmo. Desmond Moses, he passed away, and tonight we are going to be talking about him and his life and his legacy. And it's bittersweet because we get to see and enjoy his work and reminisce on his contributions. But it's sad because we think that he has taken too soon. Of course, we're not in control, and he done more than his fair share. So, but at the same time, he does leave a void, and so that's what our program is tonight. We're going to be focusing on our brother Rasmo and sharing with his family and friends our heartfelt sense of loss and emptiness. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Let your friends and family know that this weekend interview is on. Share the like and grab your glass of water, your wine, whatever it is that you have as your favorite beverage, and come right back. Let's pay homage. Let's honor a hero, a Dominican hero, Rasmo. As I said before, the quick break, tonight we are going to be remembering and celebrating our brother um, Rasmo, who everybody knows him as Rasmo. I wonder how many people actually know his real name. Real icon, a real soldier, a real giant in the Caribbean and especially in the Dominican cultural landscape. I'm joined tonight by his son, Gami. Gami Moses. He's no stranger to the TDN. He has been on with us a few times. He is the PRO of DotSac, and so you see him in that role as well. An organization in which his father, Rasmo, was actually the first president of DotSac. Uh, you know, those of you who are listening to us in Dominica, I know that you feel that same sense of loss. We are live on DigiPlay channel 59 for RVR Jams Radio, and in the Toronto Market Radio Online SBE also carries this weekly interview live. So good night to you, whichever market that you're listening to us in, whichever geographic area. Those of you who are listening for the first time, welcome, and my regular every week listener, welcome back. So, as I said, my guest tonight is Gami Moses, and I'm just really honored and humble that in the midst of what must be a difficult time for him and his family, he makes the time to come and share that special time with us, and we are very honored for that. We know of Ras Moses. I know him as a little boy, just as a public figure, beating his drums and saying his poetry, spoken word poetry, introducing a whole different genre to performance of spoken words and really carrying that message. Um, on the drums, on the wings of the drums, carrying that message to the public. And he was always about consciousness, Rastafari. He was always about consciousness, um, and always, positive, and really giving hope to the young people and the people of Dominica. So I want to welcome Gami on right now. Let's give him a warm welcome back to TDN. It especially needs to be warm, um, because we want to let him know that we sympathize with him, um, that our hearts go out to him and his family. Um, Sam, can you bring Gami up? Yes, no, let me see. Yeah, so he's up. Gami, welcome back to this weekend interview. I wish it was under different circumstances, but you know, there's no way we can know what you feel. But if our words can provide any comfort, we wish you and your family our deepest condolences at this time.
Thank you, Drago. First thing I would like to say is just thank you to yourself and TDN and Sam for creating some space to recognize my father. And I just want to say thank you to everyone as well for the condolences and the well wishes, and just the strength during this time. So we at family, we appreciate the strength and the messages and just the pouring of love and support that we've been receiving from the public.
Yeah, certainly, because I know he's your dad, but I feel like he belonged to all of us, especially all of us Dominican. Um, and I know from interacting with him, he created his community where he lived. I think it's in California he was,
Yeah.
where he also had that kind of community presence and community acceptance. I'm going to give you a few moments, Gami, to just talk about your dad, the type of person that he was. What was it like? Because you're following in his same footsteps in
Mhm.
arts and entertainment and messaging with music. But just talk about your dad for a moment. Let us, from a perspective of a son who obviously admired his father to the extent that you seem to be following very closely in his footsteps.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Drago, my earliest one of my earliest memories of my father was just you know being around being around him, and I used you know I used to be like on the buses and stuff going all over Dominica where he was performing. And sometimes I'll fall asleep and then I wake up, I'm in front of a stage, and so that was one of my earliest memories. Um, he was, I remember going up to the hills with him, up in the Zion, to get fouige. He was big into crafts and
Hmm.
making drums, and so one of the things I used to do with him as a little boy is to go up in the hills with him.
Hmm.
Sometimes I didn't want to go into the Zion, so he would say, man, there's coconut and zabuka, and that's all he had to say. And I was, let's go. And so I grew up, I grew up around him in the culture, attending like papi show weddings with him, the ballet performances, with the Polymetric Cultural Group and his group DSAP. And it was a beautiful thing to see all the rehearsals. I used to see the whole process, and I used to see them rehearsing, and then I would actually see the actual show, and so just being in the background. And then now and then when they use in breaks in between, I used to go and play on the drums, while they're taking their little breaks. And I just remember that. I remember him taking me to Carnival, to see the parades and stuff. I remember one time as a little boy, he introduced me to Hurricane, who was the king at the time, and so that's my memory of him in terms of being around him and seeing him. I used to see him do all kind of crafts, and he was very gifted with his hands. He used to make fouige. and that's the fun. He used to make
Mhm.
earrings, he used to make tie dye. He was all around. He used to paint, and so I grew up in that. And then another memory I would share of him too is one time he was doing some work with the village of Scott's Head, and they were using popular theater, and popular theater is just using theater to teach and to
Right.
educate, right?
Mhm.
And they were practicing, and one of the scenes I remember from them, so the issue they was addressing in Scott's Head was littering, right? And people keeping the beach and areas clean, because it's a fishing village. And I remember one of these scenes distinctively where you had the fishermen pulling in the net, and the fishermen pulling
Mhm.
in the net.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then when they pulled in the net, there was no fish. It was rubbish and this and that,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know. So I remember that scene and that experience distinctively, and you know, so and that's what he was doing, using theater to teach, right? Instead of like bringing just talking to people, using theater as a way to teach and to educate, you know. And he was big on that popular theater, and he did that around the Caribbean, and he did that in Dominica with MCA, Movement of Cultural Awareness, So I that's some of my memories that I
Yeah,
have.
and so what I'm hearing from you is almost that what we saw as the public was actually the real man. There wasn't a different person at home or in the background. What was presented to the public was actually Rasmo 24/7.
Yeah, he had a passion for the arts,
Hmm.
for not just drumming but dancing, and he also had a passion for young people as well. He had a passion for working with young people and teaching young people. He did a lot of work in California, but he did a lot of work where I am right now in New Haven,
New Haven,
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Yeah. So he did work with the Festival of Arts and Ideas, doing community programs with them, but he also did a lot of youth development work here in New Haven.
In New Haven.
You know.
So I remember him, just what I remember about him is this Rasta man on the stage with his drums chanting his poems. And that connected with me as a young person. And so he seemed to be somebody ahead of his time, at least for the society that we were in, because coming from the 70s, where Rastaman was a crime and Rasta was hunted down, there was a bright line between Rasta and society. You know, society was Babylon and Rasta want to exist in Zion. And so Rasta didn't really used to take part in cultural things per se, because that was part of Babylon. Rasta had the consciousness and the reggae music, and they stayed like that, and the society, and there was very little blending. But here was this Rasta man participating in cultural activities, and as you say, doing popular theater, and doing it in a different way, using his drums, so connecting back to our African heritage. So he seemed to instinctively understand the need to bridge the gap, and so that is one of the things I think of with Rasmo, where he was like a bridge between the Rasta community and the Black consciousness community residing in the Zion and society that was considered to be Zion. He was an icon that spanned that bridge. And so, I mean, watching him growing up, you must have had a lot of experiences of seeing him as a visionary and seeing him coaching and working with groups and his innovative and creative ideas. And you reminded me that he did craft with the fern, the black fern that we call freesia, and he did earrings and leather stuff and those things. So I mean, I don't know if you have, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but if you have specific stories of where you just watch him at work and realize that, hey, my father is a genius, man, you know. with the way that he's able to break things down and bring it to where we, the audience, can identify with it. Do you have any kind of knowledge that you can share with us, stories or in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think one story I remember. I'll share a most not too recent, but recent enough where Um, so when I first moved to the US,
Hmm.
you know, I got picked up from the airport by my sister, and then she took me home. My father was waiting for me. Say, hey, daddy, as I reached, I was building a set, for a performance the next day, that he was doing in a school.
That was his
Okay.
life, huh? Hmm.
I reached, I said, hey, daddy, boom. And right away, I was building the set for a production next day.
Hmm. Hmm.
Next day, I put on my jacket. It was March, so it was still cold. I put on my jacket. We drive to the school, and I am there on the stage, setting up this set for performances by young people doing poetry, acting, performance, and I'm there helping out. Now, all this is happening, Drago, and I'm watching the whole vibes, and I'm helping out. I had no clue or no idea that that is where I was headed in terms of youth development and using the arts to teach and as an outlet for young people. I didn't know that, and I started from the next day I landed, I was in it,
Hmm.
so I remember I will always remember that experience, you know.
Because that's what you do. Tell us a little bit about what you do and how you connected to your father's work and your father's influence. Then.
Yeah, so I mean, so yeah, and again, I just
Hmm.
I grew up in the vibes, right? Grew up
Hmm.
seeing being around him and performing and seeing him perform, and I get up here and right away from the get go, I'm going to all these different places with him, and he's using rhythm and movement to teach, right? He's
Hmm.
using it to for fun, to build community, right? And he's also using it as an outlet for people to like express themselves and creating space, you know. And I say, wow, you know. So I say, wow, I love that. I just, I got into it, and I just took it, and I ended up in doing environmental education and youth development work,
Hmm.
you know. And that in itself, a lot of people ask me, you know, why am I an environmentalist, and where did I get that from, and so forth. You know, a big part of it is because of the time I spent with my father, going up in the Zion, you know, and having that connection with nature, right? And one one of the deepest conversations I've had with my father most recently was, my father said to me, he said, a child or a youth who is growing up without a connection to the natural world is like a child without an umbilical cord,
Wow.
you know? And my father said that to me, and I say, wow, you know? And that is part of my mission. What I do now, Jago, is I connect young people to the environment. I take them camping, I take them hiking, biking, teach them outdoor skills, you know, and it's because that is part of my roots and what he taught me,
Right. And so, the environmental part of it, a lot of people maybe didn't realize that your dad was a huge environmentalist, you know. As you said, he was always in nature, always in the mountains, always um, just in nature, enveloped and closed in nature. Um, even like in his attire, the way he carried himself, you can just see that he was a real rootsman. And growing up in Dominica, there is so much environmental work into the environmental protection, of environmental awareness, and one of the things that he saw clearly was that Dominicans have a strong affinity to music and rhythm. And so I think he saw that, you know, if I have a message, I might go up on stage and sing. I might go where I can talk to people, but the most effective way to reach my people is is with rhythm and with music and with his drums. And I hear you saying that when he transitioned from Dominica and he came to the US, he realized that it's not just his people in Dominica that was connected by music. The people in Connecticut and in California and just in general humanity was there. We have a performance, a music video that's done by your father. We're going to take a quick pause and watch that. Just to share some of his work with with the audience and make them remember the vibrancy and how much joy he has in his eyes when he is in his element and performing. And once and when we're done, we'll come back and we'll continue to talk about maybe his work that he did in the last few years, um, that he was with us. Especially, he was concerned about domestic violence and violence against women, and a lot of that kind of work that is not necessarily it's in the public because he spoke about it in in his act, but how deep that his involvement in fighting those things were. So let's take a quick look at Rasmo in his musical video that he did around domestic violence.
It's all about power, power and control. Power over mind, over body and soul. It's all about power, power and control. Power over mind, over body and soul. It's all about power, 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 power. Someone trying to have control over another in an existing or past relationship. It's all about control, 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 control. Someone trying to be captain of the ship. Whether it is sunken or it is afloat, it's all about power, whether direct or remote. Yes, it's all about power, power and control. Power over mind, over body and soul. It's all about power, power and control. Power over mind, over body and soul. Oh, na na na. Ooh. Oh, na na na. Ooh. There are those that do it verbally by using abusive words constantly. But words, 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 they can hurt you, see? It can get physical like a push, a slap, a kick. Look out for manipulation, cause abusers can be slick. Yes, you know the name calling game, breaking your self-esteem, making you feel ashamed. To some extreme, it can become self-blame by victims of constant abuse and pain. Cause it's all about power, power and control. Power over mind, over body and soul. Yes, it's all about power, power and control. Power over mind, over body and soul. Power over mind, that's financial to your health and welfare, it can be detrimental. Reclamation of gifts already given, even that too, is all power driven. One person in control of the bank accounts. Abuse, to abuse, yes, is what it really amounts. So it's all about power, power and control. Power over mind, over body and soul. It's all about power, power and control. Power over mind, over body and soul. Love yourself, don't hate, or it will escalate. Love yourself, don't hate, cause it will escalate. No, brothers and sisters, let's talk about sex, sex, sex. There are those who treat others like sexual objects. No matter how one's urges are strong, to force yourself on another is absolutely wrong. To consenting adults, whether you're married or not, no really means no, no, no. But seems some people forgot, cause it's all about power, power and control. Power over mind, over body and soul. It's all about power, power and control. Power over mind, over body and soul. It's all about power, power and control. Power over mind, over body and soul. It's all about power, power and control. Power over mind, over body and soul. Lots of people think that rape is done by a stranger, but most of the time, the people involved are familiar with each other. Power and control, body and soul.
See your father on stage, does it bring it back memories? Because you grew up in it. You're a little boy falling asleep, going all kind of places.
Yeah, definitely. It's like I said before. It was seeing the work. From start to finish, man. Seeing the rehearsal. And seeing like how much he had a passion for that. And he sort of like he used to get in that place they call the zone,
Mm-hmm.
that place where it's just like in another dimension somewhere
Mm-hmm.
in that rhythm, and he was very ancestral in his thoughts too as well. He really believed in like paying tribute to the ancestors from near and far, you know, and that's why he studied the history of like where these rhythms were coming from and how they were passed on from generation to generation. And that's why he was teaching people, well, these rhythms survived slavery because for sounding out the rhythms, and because during slavery you couldn't practice your culture, but it survived. And that's our connection to our ancestors, because these are the rhythms that they were playing. This is the rhythms that are going to go up in the atmosphere and through the grounds and spread around, making that connection. So he was big on that,
That's interesting. I mean, we know he embodied the whole personal, African identity, but not just African, but human identity. Because, as I said, he was a bridge builder. He spanned the gaps between people, showing them what we have in similarity, rather than highlighting differences. But he did it without necessarily compromising or diminishing who you are. We stand up strong as we are in our heritage, linking back to our ancestors and meeting everybody else on that level where no one is necessarily inferior or superior to each other. That's what we embodied in Rasmo. The the part of his work, though, that he was also passionate about was to try to improve conditions for women in the homes and just action against gender violence in general. Um, were you is that something he always was interested in, or that came to later down? Maybe was there a particular incident that inspired him to go there? Do you know those?
So when I moved to the US right around that time,
Mhm,
you know, he was working on an album, and the album was called Pink and Blue, right? And what it did, what the album was about was it looked at domestic violence, but it was talking about also gender
mhm,
biases,
mhm,
you know. So what society defines as a man, like, a man shouldn't cry, or a man, girls should only do certain things, or act a certain way, So just that was some of the topics that he was highlighting in that album.
mhm,
Now, what he was doing at the time also was he was using that domestic violence platform also to in prisons, you know, with young men and young women around, like, to let them see that, violence is not the way, and also to give them a space also to, like, express themselves, and to, like, work with them on the issue of violence. So what he did also during that time was he launched a production every October for domestic violence month, which is in October, and it was called Chant Down Domestic Violence and Dating Violence. And it was a whole production of, you had a gathering of poets, you had survivors giving testimony, you had drumming, you had all kinds of different performances to bring awareness during that month. And he actually ran that event for a number of years in Connecticut,
Connecticut,
in
mhm,
before he moved back to
to California.
California. Yeah.
So essentially, you know, his entire life was spent guiding people and trying to break down stereotypes and connecting people. He was that was Rasmo. It looks like, just really shining that bright light and letting the light shine on everybody and highlighting similarities, shedding light on ugliness like violence and the disadvantages and the challenges of girls and women. Uh, you know, he really embodied that public figure without, but you know what else it was? It was never about Rasmo. You see some people who attain that type of popularity and name recognition and amass a certain reputation, and they make a lot of things about them. I am Anthony Drago, I am so and so. I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that. He seems somehow to be able to strike that balance between leading people without necessarily making it about him. That humbleness that that we see in his personality. Is that your experience? I mean, I know I'm asking you a question about your dad, so the
Yeah.
stereotypical answer is yes, but I'm sure you have the same impression that I have of the man.
Yeah, I think, like, I think everywhere he go, he was about community, man. He was about community building.
Hmm.
I think my father really understood that any type of social work you do, or anything that restorative work you do, that the foundation was community building, you know, and that nothing cannot happen without that. Whether you're working in the schools, whether you're working, wherever you are, that the foundation of this kind of work, or anything that you do, is community building,
Hmm.
and connecting people, and connecting, you know. And I think, he had a deep passion for teaching young people as well,
Right, right.
the arts, and giving them an outlet and a spotlight. some of his recent work was working with the kids in dailies, you know, and that's something that he always wanted to do and always wanted to be consistent with, was to like go back to his where he grew up, you know, where he got that roots and culture from listening to the cassava meals, you know, and the rhythms playing on the tibois, you
Right.
know, to go back there and to make sure that the children they learn the culture, learn the rhythms, you know. He spent some time in Dominica trying to revive the daily old mass and the sensei and that kind of working with the old mass and stuff, you know, because he was that's what he was passionate about, that stuff, you know.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, we can talk about Rasmo for a long time because there's so many different facets and aspects to the man. But the, the common thread, I think, is teaching and leadership. He always looked for a way to help to bring a message and to enlighten the people that he interacted with. Um, I remember seeing the videos with people in dailies, and of course, it brought me back to Castle Bruce. I grew up in Castle Bruce, making farine and grinding cassava on these big mills, and if you know, we didn't have so much Toloma on that scale as they had in dailies and some of the other places, but we did a lot of cassava, and it brought me back to those times where people would come together. This person harvesting their cassava, the women and men would come together and help them to harvest and to peel the cassava, and the men would come and grind it, and that whole spirit in the village. And when you finish with the farine, everybody gets a portion of farine as their reward for participating. And then next week is another person own, and the next week is another person own, and that kind of community where everybody comes together. And I think it's so obvious that that is where he came from, and he embodied that. He saw how life was simple and enjoyable and viable, with everybody helping and working for one person to benefit at a time. And you come wholeheartedly and work with that person because you know next week is your turn. Everybody's going to show up and
Mm,
work as if it is their project they're working on. You know, I grew up in Castlebush, which is the same East Coast like Dalis, and the men would go build boats together, cut boats from big gummy tree, and
yeah.
it doesn't matter whose boat it is, all of them fall in and work. They build houses together. They, like I said, they did their cassava together. If somebody is doing a new piece of land or is going to replant, because 4 or 5 men come together and work with him, everybody, nobody holding back, everybody on working hard as if they're working for themselves.
Mm,
And so that is the, the genesis from where Rasmo came from, and he seemed to have passed it on nicely to you because I observe your work as we come towards the conclusion of our time together, Gami. We know Rasmo was the first president, as we said, of DOTSAC, an organization that you're now the public relations officer of. Um, we, I'm going to give you an opportunity to just talk about his whole. That's what we've been doing for the time, but in terms of putting it together, if there's any aspect of his life that we didn't touch on, because there's no way we can talk about Rasmo in 1 hour and touch on everything that he's done. I'm going to give you some time to just reminisce, just dwell in that time. Um, if you want to talk to your family or talk to anybody in particular, feel free to do that. And any other information that you may have to share with the audience, we can do that as well.
yeah, um I appreciate the time that I spent with my father. you know I learned a lot from him, you know and he used to tell me so many stories, the same Kudma stories you was
Hmm.
mentioning about there.
Hmm.
He used to tell me about those stories. He used to tell me the stories about him, growing up in the dreadlock camps and trying to talk to them guys and talk about amnesty and trying
Even
to
then, he
be,
was trying to build bridges, huh?
what I mean, and tell them it's easier for peace and and amnesty and try to talk to them guys and whatnot, the dreads up there.
Mm-hmm,
Um, he ran one of the it was called Rastafari Revelation on DBS. That
mm-hmm.
was like one of the first times you could hear Rasta in mainstream, on the radio station.
Right.
And they used to get letters from all over the Caribbean, to because of that program. So he was a wealth of knowledge in that sense, and living that history, the Black Power movement in Dominica, and the anti apartheid movement in Dominica, and
Mm-hmm.
the historical context of those movements, and how he was around them, So a lot of those stories and things that he used to share, and that I'm glad that I picked up as gems, and hopefully I can write down and record so that future generations can know that and learn from it and experience it. So yeah, so all in all, yeah, and so I think one more memory I would share that I remember as a kid was, and while I'm doing that too, I just want to honor Ras Algie as well, who was my father brethren who passed, and
Mm-hmm.
also Albie J.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were in the same group together, DSAP,
Just that.
drumming, singing, and poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to honor them because they were part of his group and they were really close with each other.
Mm-hmm.
But what memory I wanted to share was I remember, man, all the youths from all over. My father and DSAP, they got all the youths from Roseau to come together to practice in People's Park, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was part of that whole process as a youth. And we didn't have drums. Some of us didn't have drums. Some of us had buckets and sticks. And we were practicing for days. And in order to be in the carnival opening parade, man, imagine that. Youths from
Yeah.
all over the ghetto in Roseau.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
From Pong to Virgin Lane, all over,
All over.
came,
Gotcha everywhere. Yeah.
yes, came practice consistently. And then for about 2 years we did that, man. That was, and we was in the opening of Carnival drumming, Imagine what that did to the youths and how that built their
Mm-hmm.
confidence,
No,
and,
definitely. Yeah.
and I was a part of that and seeing the whole thing and being in it with them other youths, So that's one memory I remember that he did. And Rashida was also a part of Rashida Gashet, and and
Mm-hmm.
and Roots was a part of it as well. So that's the memory I wanted to share to that
Bringing people together.
yeah.
If we had to summarize his body of work, which is difficult to do, the banner would be, bringing people together, building bridges,
Yeah,
showing people that there can be a better and a peaceful way.
yeah, and I also want to mention his mother, my grandmother, who passed away. That she was a big influence on him as well. She was a teacher, and she
Okay.
was the one that encouraged his writing. She had an influence on me as well. I spent time with her. She used to give me the newspaper to read. You
Right.
know, she get me a pen pad. She tell me write that person over there. And
Mhm.
so so I want to mention her and honor her as well.
Yeah.
In the
But
ancestral
that's
place.
why it's important, to spend the time with the young people. Nowadays, it's easy to give them a tablet or a phone and let them entertain themselves. Spend time with them because it goes a long way, and that person that you nurture can go on and be like Rasmo and make a real difference in the world. Rasmo will live on forever because he left his legacy as a body of work. He left his legacy in you and his other kids who he inculcated that spirit of community, as you call it, and building bridges and spanning across gaps and bringing people together. So definitely, folks, if he continues to shine as a beacon to us. We have in 2022 we did an independence celebration because it was COVID, it was virtual, and so we have Rasbo's contribution to that. We're going to go out with that. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want to thank you, Gami, especially. I know how stuff gets in the world when this sort of incidents happen. There's so much to take care of, and so I really appreciate and I'm honored that I reached out to you and you immediately said, "Sure, I can come on," and to do that. An hour doesn't do Rasmo any justice, but at the same time, um, we wanted to make sure that we marked um, the passing of an icon, the taking his place in the sky as a star, bright shining star. And to everybody, who feels that loss, which is almost everybody he came in contact with. We want to give you the family, Gami, you and your family, your siblings, everybody, the encouragement that he continues to live in our.
This one's called Taboulamu. Chaque fois, avouez-vous, qu'il y a moins qu'à battre contre un bout. Aïe, doudou, à qu'à sentir l'amour. Là où tourne dos ou en qu'à vini fou. Chaque fois, avouez-vous, qu'il y a moins qu'à battre contre un bout. Doudou, les entend nous parler. En qu'à fouiller son tête aux pieds. Parce que n'y a parole qui haut. Il a brûlé comme flamme qui chaud. Chaque fois, avouez-vous. J'ai à moins qu'à battre contre un bout. Aïe doudou, à qu'à sentir l'amour. Là où tourne dos en qu'à vini fou. Chaque fois, avouez-vous. J'ai à moins qu'à battre contre un bout. Doudou, doudou. Doudou l'entend nous chanter, encore un billet la moyenne, c'est comme si dit en tout au guet, encore tout doublé, chaque fois, avouez-vous, qu'il y a moins qu'à battre contre un bout, aïe doudou, encore sentir l'amour, là où tourne dos ou encore vini fou, chaque fois, avouez-vous, qu'il y a moins qu'à battre contre un bout. Doudou, les regarder aux yeux, quand yon diamant yeux ou kaklewe, oui ou ses enfants yon étoiles, oui ou ses wassen la ciel, chaque fois, avouez-vous, qu'il y a moins qu'à battre contre un bout, aïe doudou, en cas senti l'amour, là où tourne dos ou en cas vini fou, chaque fois, avouez-vous, qu'il y a moins qu'à battre contre un bout. Doudou, les coucher. La quand billet la moyenne. Doudou, les coucher. Quand tout seulement moins qu'à wever. Quand tout seulement moins qu'à wever. Ou qu'à quoi qui ça c'est j'ai. Mais moi qu'à dire. Moi bien sérieux. Chaque fois, avouez-vous. Qu'il y a moins qu'à battre contre un bout. Aïe doudou. Qu'à sentir l'amour, là où tourne tout, en qu'à vini fou. Chaque fois, avouez-vous, j'ai à moins qu'à battre contre un bout, doudou. Zagayaka muteka ye. Zagayaka muteka ye. Poisson à la mer, Zwazi yo ka vole yan le. She epi ta. She epi chat sou te. A di dan la ye se loch. Epi te tako le sou wash. Zaga yaka mute kaye. Poisson an la mer. Zwazi yo ka vole yan le. She epi chat sou te. A di dan la ye se loch. Te tako le sou wash. Wash, 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 wash. Pêchon an di dan fou. Cochon an la boue. Cochon anglo-sale, mi nom sous tombé y'a canal à carnaval, mi bas canal, dans la geôle c'est geôlier, et puis prisonnier, les élèves en l'école. You up pour les you up, l'Amérique pour l'Américain.
Nice. Yes, you miss the physical, you miss being able to call your dad and just chat with him or run something by him, or he's an artist like you, so probably when you did your work, you would bounce it off him and get his feedback and get his blessing. I know as a child, especially if you're in the same field as your father, you really value his eyes on you and see the pride in his eyes when he see your production. So you got to experience that, I'm sure. And so we hope that comforts you and the family during this difficult time. So as we go out, final words, and then we will bring it to a wrap.
Yeah. So I just want to tell you, thank you, Drago, for creating the space for honoring my father, and also Sam and everybody at TDN. Thank you very much. I want to say thank you to the general public, everyone who's sending condolences messages to just everybody. Thank you for the support. I just want to mention my siblings. There's four of us. I have my older sister Moses, and my little brother and sister Amin and Amilka, just to recognize them and tell them hold strong as well. And all my other family, there's a lot of family, so all the family and everybody else, my mother and everybody, you just tell them to hold strong, and thank you everybody for the messages, and I appreciate it, and for the love and support and for the recognition as well.
No, you're very welcome. You saw there's the least we can do, and as you develop more solid plans and you know exactly what you're doing, feel free to reach out. Um, in whatever form that we can support and contribute, we are here. Okay, just a text, a phone call, whatever, to myself, to Sam. You need to spread word as to the final honor on this side of the for Rasmo. It will be a privilege and an honor to participate. So just
Thank
reach
you.
out and stay strong, my brother. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So, listeners, there you have it. You look up in the sky, you see one more bright star. It's not a satellite, it's our brother Rasmus shining down on us, continuing to shine his light and to bridge gaps and to build bridges and to let those of us men know that the mistreatment of girls and women is unholy. They're the mothers of the earth. They are our mothers, our sisters, our aunts. Um, the Rastafari community, the Dominican community, the Caribbean community, those in New Haven, those in California, those all over the globe that Rasmo touched. And he introduced that spoken word and did it so well. We honor him. We watch his transition, and we know definitely he did his work and he did it sufficiently well and adequately. And we wish him eternal rest. Although, I believe that we come back in so it's next time around. I can just imagine um, the impact that he will have the next time around. So, folks, I wish you a happy rest of the week, And let's, take a pause, take some example from him. Be brave to follow your passion, and don't be afraid to step into a gap where you see a gap and try to make peace, try to build links, try to build bridges. So we again express our condolences to the family. And Gami, thank you for coming on. You're part of our TDN family, so we feel your loss. And all the best to you and your siblings and everybody else who was close to Rasmo. So good night, folks. And you can find his work. His work is on YouTube. Watch it. Pay some homage. Good night.